Some people think that the wealthy just got lucky. Well, maybe so. Or that they had their wealth handed to them, which really isn't true when you look at the statistics. The statistics show that the majority of millionaires are first-generation millionaires. So what's the difference? The difference is that actually the wealthy see money and wealth differently than those that aren't wealthy, than the poor. And so when you do the same, we can change your financial destiny forever. And in this video, we're going to talk about the difference between those that are rich and those that are not. All right, so stay tuned. I'll see you in the episode. Welcome to this episode of the Affluent Entrepreneur Show. So is it luck that get the wealthy wealthy? Yeah, not likely, okay? Is it that it was handed to them? But still, the stats don't show it. So here's the thing. The rich look at things differently. They see money differently. They see wealth differently. They see their purpose differently. And I get it. It could be really easy for you to pass it off and just say, yeah, they're different than me. I'll be honest with you. With all the people that I've worked with, and I have spoken around the world and dealt with people that are just starting out to those that are billionaires, and they're just normal people. Yeah, some of them are jerks, but most of them are normal people. And so the key is this. First off, it isn't your fault. If you're unaware of some of the things that you need to do to build wealth, to create financial freedom, to have the financial independence that I think is your birthright, it's not your fault because we were never taught it. They don't teach it in schools. We don't talk about it at homes because it's taboo. So here's the thing. Let's work through it. Let's talk about what do the rich do differently, because here's what we know. If you're not where you want to be financially, or you're not going in the direction that you want to go financially, well, without changing something, we're not going to get you there. So let's change it. Let's give it to you in this way. I'm going to walk through 11 differences between the rich and the not so rich, the rich versus the poor, okay? And it's not to take sides. It's simply to give you the perspective of where you need to look at, and let's walk through those. Let me jump to the iPad, and let's make this happen, all right? So the first thing I want to talk about is this. It comes down to mindset. And, too often we get so caught up in this whole idea of, hey, what do I need to invest in? Should I invest in crypto? I can't tell you how many people go, hey, should I invest in crypto? Should I do Bitcoin? Should I do Ethereum? What are NFTs? And it's like, slow down a little bit. Slow down a little bit. Let's work on the mindset. Let's understand the thinking, okay? I know there's a lot of personal development folks that'll sit back and say, model someone's behavior. And I think it's an absolute mistake. You don't model their behavior, fake it till you make it and all that stuff. What you want to model is their thinking. So I'm always, when I'm working with entrepreneurs or when I'm working with mentors or I'm speaking to someone who has achieved certain things, I don't ask them, what'd you do? I ask them, what were you thinking? Because if I understand what they were thinking, then it gives me the ability to drive what they did. Because if I think the same, I'll do the same in most cases. Now, so I want to understand the thinking, which is the mindset. And when you look at it, the rich versus the poor get stuck in their stories. Now, this is something that permeates everyone, okay? And in fact, in the surveys that I've done, talking with people that have just started out that have nothing to those that have millions and even billions, they all have money stories. It doesn't matter how much you have. The money stories are still there. They just change a little bit. The characters change. The emotions change. The reasons change. You might have guilt. You might have shame. You might have embarrassment. You may have... It doesn't matter. So we know that the stories are there. So what do the rich do differently? They look at understanding. Here's the way I look at this. Is there are facts and there are interpretations. And I take people through an exercise in the Affluence Blueprint that help with this. But the fact of the matter is that too often we are sitting and stewing in our interpretations of the facts. And it's those interpretations that create the stories that we couldn't, we're never going to be good enough. We don't have the same skills. We don't have the same education. We don't have the same background. We don't have the same knack for chat, all those things. I'm not good looking. I don't have a good voice, whatever it is. Those are all interpretations. They're not the reality of what's going on. Here's the thing. If the stories and interpretations control us, then we won't make the moves necessary to do things. I've made bad investments. Let's face it. I've lost more money than some people make in a lifetime. The good news, and I say this from stage. I said, here's the deal. The good news is I've done enough things successful to be successful. I've done enough things right to be successful. But the better news for you is I've done enough things wrong to be educational. And so I'm not infallible. No one's infallible. Warren Buffett's made bad decisions. I've made bad decisions. I'll continue to make bad decisions because it's through that I grow. The difference is this. The rich, when they make a bad decision or something happens, instead of crafting a story that's disempowering, they come to an understanding, knowledge, learnings, lessons, a new way of looking at things, that's empowering. And so what I have seen over and over again, this is why you'll see people that have had millions and lost it all and were able to rebuild it all. Because instead of getting stuck in the story, the interpretations, they looked at the lessons and the learnings, the experience it gave them to give them understanding. So the first difference is how we look at what happens to us. One makes stories, the other creates understandings. Number two is money itself. The rich plan, they work from a plan. They have a strategy. They have a way to look at things, and their driving force is freedom. Their driving force is purpose. Their driving force is a higher element than just the money. The driving force in most cases isn't status, okay? Whereas what we find, especially in today's world, we live in a social media world, a comparison world, a media world, where we're constantly getting bombarded with comparisons and people parading their Lambos and their freaking jets and their boats and their wonderfully, beautifully orchestrated, choreographed lives on social media, that it gets us to turn around and say, let me swipe up and let me buy. And we start buying things. And so what ends up happening is we spend money we don't have, or we spend money that we wouldn't otherwise because we're trying to impress people that actually don't even care about us. And we actually don't care about them. Okay? And I know I'm being strong language here, but I think it's really important because those that are poor tend to make lifestyle impulsive choices versus planned freedom choices with their money. And so they look at money differently in that regard. That then leads us to number three. And number three is really about goals. The wealthy, the rich, have a much longer view. Their goals are long-term. Their goals are looking at things from the perspective of what is it going to take to achieve what I want in the future. Now, most of the time, they're not living on beans and rice like some people will tell you to do, but they're living a good life, but a life within reason, to give them the opportunity and the ability to live a life of full freedom down the road. Now, we talk about this in the Affluence Blueprint, saying that there's three critical outcomes to live a life of affluence. And the first is a richer lifestyle, which has to do with money, but doesn't. It has to do with the experiences and the feelings and the way we live life, the way we enjoy life in there, and then a deeper impact. a deeper impact, an impact on who we serve, an impact on who we love, and an impact on who we become. And then complete freedom. And the most rudimentary freedom in that freedom is financial freedom. Financial freedom, yeah, it's meaningful, but it's not everything. The wealthy, the rich understand that the most important freedoms are not financial freedom, but it's what financial freedom gives them. And that is time freedom, the ability to control their time, the ability to decide what they're going to do, when they're going to do it. In fact, I actually believe that your wealth should be measured in time and not dollars, in the sense of understanding how much of my time do I control. If I asked you the question, how much of your time are you in control of? What would the answer be? And would you like it? See, every decision I make has to do with my time, my lifestyle. Okay? And so the goals from a rich person's standpoint are much longer term perspective, whereas those that don't have any tend to live in the moment. Okay? And we have a generation that really focuses on that live in the moment mentality. You only live once, YOLO. Okay? Yeah, you only live once. Let's do it right so you have that longevity, because there was a time it wasn't this way, but you only live once and you live longer today. So how are you going to make sure that happens? So we don't forsake today for tomorrow. We live today, but we do it within reason so we can have a good tomorrow too. You know, the majority of Americans over 55 don't have anything saved for retirement. Yet the projected medical costs in retirement are in excess of $200,000. How are we going to make that happen? Okay. So the goals, the way they look at goals is very different. Number 4, how they evaluate risk. How they look at risk is different. Those that are rich, they are looking at things and saying, how do I reduce the risk? The risk mitigators, as I call them. And yet those that are poor or don't have, they're trying to avoid risk. They're actually trying to push complete risk away. They want and look, any investment is going to bring risk. But can we do it strategically where we reduce our exposure to that risk? That's what wealthy do. They'll go into a deal, but they won't go into a deal without evaluating it. I have my 8 rules of investing that I teach people in the Affluence Blueprint and my master's program that allow them to look at it. We've got the way that we evaluate funds, mutual funds, stocks, and everything. How do you evaluate it? We're looking at how we can reduce our exposure to risk, not avoid risk altogether. Okay, that's the difference. Is that the rich are willing to take on risk if it's strategic risk, and they're reducing it as best possible. And if it's too risky, they won't do it. But if all we're trying to do is avoid risk, we won't take the necessary steps to achieve the things that we need to achieve to have the financial freedom we deserve. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay? Hopefully this is making sense. So let's look at number 5. Number 5 is how they look at growth. Now, when we look at it from this perspective, the rich come at life and their growth with a curiosity mindset. I wonder if, they say to themselves, I wonder if this is possible. I'm curious. I'd like to learn more. I'm trying to learn more about the NFTs and the whole blockchain perspective, so I can learn deep. One, because I want to bring it to you. I'm testing some things so I understand it, and I go, hey, this is what I did, and this is how it hurt. This is how it won. This is what went on. But I'm coming at it with a curiosity and a desire to grow from it, not necessarily being content with what I have, which is what a lot of folks do, is that they settle or they're content with where they're at. I'm not saying not to be happy. There's a ton of gratitude that we need to have for what we have, no matter how much or how little. I'm blessed to be doing what I'm doing, the way I'm doing it, where I'm doing it, with who I'm doing it with. It's a blessing, and I'm thankful and appreciative every single day. But does that mean that I'm going to stagnate? And the answer is no. So what I don't want is contentment that leads to stagnation. Contentment leading to happiness and curiosity, great. So that's the difference in the way that they look at growth. Number 6, okay, so now we'll start to look at it and say, how do they look at, okay, and number 6 is, how do they look at investing? So here's an interesting one. So many people, and I have friends that I grew up with that are in this position. They looked at the investing as optional. I'll get to it one day. I'll get to it one day. And they didn't look at it as a priority. The wealthy will look at it as a priority. Here's what happens. If we look at life, what happens is that most people, they make money, they make income, okay? Then they spend the money on their lifestyle, okay? And once they spend the money on their lifestyle, they see what's left, and then they invest, okay? So that's the order that they look at it in. The rich, and this is something that I see and have seen through the years of working with folks that have done it right, and I've seen where they've gone wrong. And when we flip this, then all of a sudden things change. Okay? The rich, they start with their income. They make investing a priority. So they prioritize investing, and then they look at what's left for their lifestyle. And do it that way. And if they don't like, here's the thing, if they don't like the lifestyle that's left over, they go back to figuring out how to scale their income, how to create other sources of income, to build their wealth further so they can fund the lifestyle, but they do not prioritize lifestyle over investing. Investing is a priority because it's not their key to retirement. It's their key to peace of mind and freedom, independence. So that's how they look at investing. It's an absolute necessity. It's an absolute priority, and that's the way it should be if you truly want to make this shift to a wealth creation mode. Savings, investing needs to be our priority. All right. So where does that go? Number 7. They will look at interest, compounding, the time value of money, the compound effect of time. And the wealthy will look for ways to use it to create interest. So for instance, I lend money. Don't send me, requests for loans, because you're not going to get that. But I lend money on real estate. So I become the bank. I sometimes become the owner of the real estate, but I become the bank. That means that I'm receiving interest. Someone else is paying me interest. The rich will do that to create an income stream, whereas those that aren't rich tend to borrow, tend to live on debt, tend to carry credit card balances. Almost 50% of people carry a credit card balance from month to month. Okay? And so there's a difference in interest. In one case, they're paying it. In other words, it's an expense. It's a penalty for borrowing. In another case, they're receiving it. Okay? That's the difference between the rich and the not so rich. Okay? Number 8, how do they play the game? How do they play the game? This is really interesting because I've seen even wealthy people struggle with this, is that most wealthy people, most rich people, they're playing to win. Whereas most that don't have money are playing not to lose. A very different game. But here's the cautionary tale. I have seen many people that make their $1 million plus, and then all of a sudden they shift the way they show up in their financial world. And instead of the things that they did to play the game to win, they now start playing not to lose. And so I'm not saying that you take undue risks, but understand how we play the game. Are you playing the game to win? Stacking the deck in your favor, doing the things that you once did to win, to excel, to grow, to make that? Or are you just huddling back and saying, I just don't want to lose? Okay. Two different ways to show up to the game. All right. Number nine. It's what's their attitude? The rich are committed to their wealth, to their financial growth, okay, to their literacy, okay? Whereas those that aren't, they're interested. They'll read an article here and there. They might read a book. They might listen to a podcast, but they're not diligent about growing, about understanding, about getting in the game and playing the game to win, okay? So their attitude towards wealth, when you talk about the rich, is that they're committed to the wealth creation process, whereas others are simply interested. And it's those that are interested that will finally get caught in the get-rich-quick schemes, the GameStop fiasco, and meme stocks and trends and fads that look like they can make a quick buck, and then they get hammered because they don't understand, because they didn't do the legwork to understand and educate themselves in a way that they needed to. Okay? All right, number 10. Number 10 is our focus. We have the opportunity to either focus on the problem or to focus on the opportunities that might exist. Let's just talk about where we're at right now, okay? We know that at some point the Fed's going to raise interest rates. We are experiencing some level of inflation. How permanent it is, we don't know. How long it's going to stick around, I don't know. How deep it's going to get, who knows, okay? Those can create problems, and they are creating problems because people can't cover their living expenses because it's costing them more at the grocery store, it's costing them more at the gas pump, it's costing them more for supplies. All those things, take care of their kids, all those things are going up. Or we can look at it and say, what's the opportunity here? How can I take advantage or see the opportunity in this? The rich will look at this and say, where is the opportunity during inflationary times? What can I do during a time of rising interest rates to try and make money or take advantage of that situation? So the question then is, do you see everything as a problem? Or do you see the problem and then find the opportunity in the problem? Because the interesting thing is that within every problem is the solution if we take the time to examine it. And when we look through the eyes of opportunity, we'll see it much clearer and much easier than when we languish in the problem. If we sit back and say, woe is me. I've got a dear friend. All he did, he ran my events in the sense of all the AV and all that stuff. So, and he ran big events, and so when the pandemic hit and people weren't doing events and they weren't doing conferences and everything, his business tanked. And we had a conversation. I said, it's time to pivot. And he says, no. You know, he was into the art of the event and the live experience. And I said, we're not going to be live for a while because we need people to feel safe again, to go out and be in a live experience amongst a whole bunch of people. And this was right at the beginning of the pandemic in March of 2020. And I had this conversation with him. And I said, however, how can you take what's the opportunity that you can use in this time to serve people with your talents, your skills, your strengths, and your creativity? He is busier than he's ever been running hybrid and virtual events remotely now from his his facility, which his facility looks like mission control because he's controlling multiple shows and everything from this place and has all these screens and everything going on. But the key was him looking through the eyes of opportunity once he got over the problem that was handed to him. Okay. And then the last of these, number 11, is this. And I think this is huge. And that is this: responsibility. When it comes to responsibility, you can sit and blame other people, yourself, whoever it is, or you can accept what is. And here's what I mean by this. I think when I lost the money in the Ponzi scheme, it was easy for me to look at this guy and blame him and say, "You did this to me. Damn it, you did this to me. I can't believe it. And you took my money, you stole my money, you wiped out 1/3 of everything I own, you affected my family, you affected my son, you affected my future." How much do you think that's going to serve me? Now, trust me, I'm not that enlightened. So there was a whole lot of blaming going on. However, I realized that if I stayed in that blame game, I wasn't going to recover. And in fact, one of the people that was in the same Ponzi scheme as me, he spiraled so far out of control, it took him a decade before he started to get back on his feet. He started drinking, he destroyed his marriage, he destroyed his business because he was in the blame game. Versus acceptance. What is? The rich will get into the space at some point, just like I did. Acceptance, say, look, this is what is. I can't change it. This is what happened. I wish it didn't, but it happened. So what do I do from here? And with acceptance, I now have the ability to find the lessons, to learn, to grow, to change the way I do things, to respond, okay? I think when you look at responsibility, rather than feeling like a burden, put a hyphen in there. Response hyphen ability. Your ability to respond to the things that come to you or come at you. Good, bad, indifferent, it doesn't matter. So responsibility to me is my ability to respond to things effectively in a productive way. And what I see more often than not with rich people is they come to a place of acceptance and say, well, this is the hand that's been dealt to us. What are we going to do with it? It reminds me of this scene. If you haven't seen this movie, Apollo 13, it's one of the best scenes, and I wrote about it in my book, but it's one of the best scenes where you got these astronauts up there that are stranded and they got to get them home safely or they're going to die. And Ed Harris, who is running mission control, comes into the conference room with all the engineers. He dumps a box on the conference room table and says, "That's what they have up there. Let's find a way home. Let's bring these guys home. Failure isn't an option. This is what we have. What can we do with what we have? Let's figure it out." And I think that that's the thing that is really important, is that they bring a level of resourcefulness to that acceptance to say, okay, pandemic shut us down. What do we need to do now? What can we do now? I sit on some boards of directors. We had to pivot. We had to do some things differently. If we thought that we would just get through it and do business as usual, we'd still be languishing in blame. We'd still, if we survived it, we would be a fraction of what we were as a business, okay? So those are the 11 things that I think you can look at as a checklist and say, what side of the fence am I on? On the rich side or the not so rich side? Okay. But working through them and trying to build them as a muscle, as a habit, as a behavior, as a way to look at money, as a way to look at wealth is going to change the dynamics of your financial destiny forever. This is what I've seen through the decades of working with people and interviewing people and studying what it takes to be wealthy and to live, more importantly, and to live a rich life in experience, in feelings, and the way we give back, the generosity and the lifestyle. So do me a favor, if you would, make sure you go back through these 11. Use it as a checklist. Let's get you dialed in. Let's put you on the rich side of life because you deserve it. Remember, I think that financial independence is a birthright. We just need to understand how to claim it. That is why I do these things. I hope that you found value in this. And if you have questions or things that you need help with on money, wealth, or business or anything, send them my way. We'll do a video. We'll help you out. We'll do some things to coach you through it. And until we see each other on another video or another episode, always strive to live a life that outlives you. Cheers.